The blood-red sunset painted the horizon as Tabitha Hayes clutched her 6-month-old son to her chest, her ragged breath forming small clouds in the autumn air. Behind her, the town of Willow Creek grew smaller with each desperate step she took into the wilderness of 1878 Wyoming territory. "Hush now, Samuel," she whispered, pressing her cracked lips to his forehead. "We'll find somewhere safe." The infant whimpered against her, his tiny fingers gripping the worn fabric of her dress. The weight of the council's words still echoed in her mind, banished for striking the mayor's son. No decent woman attacks a man of standing. They hadn't cared that Harold Pullman had tried to take her child, claiming a widow couldn't properly raise a boy. They hadn't believed her when she explained how he'd grabbed Samuel from her arms while she worked at the laundry. All they saw was a woman who'd bloodied the nose of a prominent citizen's son. The cold wind bit through her thin shawl as darkness began to fall. Samuel's cries grew more insistent, and Tabitha felt the familiar ache of helplessness. They had nothing but the clothes on their backs and a small bundle of necessities she'd managed to grab before the sheriff escorted them to the edge of town. "I promise you, my love," she murmured, adjusting her grip on her son. "I won't let anything happen to you." The sound of approaching hoofbeats sent a spike of terror through her. Had they changed their minds? Were they coming to take Samuel after all? Tabitha darted off the trail into a cluster of scrub brush, pressing herself flat against the ground. Samuel, sensing her fear, remained eerily quiet. A lone rider appeared on the ridge above, silhouetted against the darkening sky. He sat tall in the saddle, hat pulled low over his face. The stranger paused, scanning the landscape below, and for a terrifying moment, Tabitha was certain he'd seen her. Then Samuel let out a soft, plaintive cry. The rider's head turned sharply in their direction. "Who's there?" His voice was deep, commanding but not threatening. "Show yourself, I mean no harm." Tabitha remained frozen, calculating her options. Running would be futile with a child in arms. Fighting was impossible against a grown man. Perhaps if she reasoned with him. "I said show yourself," the man repeated, dismounting and approaching cautiously. "I can hear the little one." With trembling legs, Tabitha stood, holding Samuel protectively. "We're just passing through," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We want no trouble." The stranger stopped a respectful distance away, and in the fading light, she could finally make out his features. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 30, with a weathered face that spoke of years under the harsh western sun. His eyes, a startling blue, moved from her face to the bundle in her arms. "Madam, you're a good 5 miles from town with a baby, nightfall coming, and nothing but that thin shawl." His tone softened. "That's a mighty peculiar way to be passing through." "It's not your concern," Tabitha replied, taking a step back. The man sighed, removing his hat to reveal dark hair streaked with premature silver at the temples. "Name's Zachary Dawson. I've got a ranch about 3 miles east. You and your young one won't survive the night out here." Temperatures drop fast in these parts. Samuel's cries grew stronger and Tabitha felt her resolve weakening. Her son needed warmth, food, shelter, things she couldn't provide tonight. "Why would you help us?" she asked suspiciously. "You don't know us." Zachary replaced his hat, his expression unreadable in the growing darkness. "My mother and I were once in a similar situation. Someone helped us. Figure it's my turn to do the same." He gestured toward his horse. "You can ride, I'll walk alongside." Tabitha hesitated, weighing her limited options. "How do I know I can trust you?" "You don't," he answered honestly. "But your alternatives don't look promising." A harsh gust of wind made her decision. Samuel needed shelter. "Just for tonight," she conceded. Zachary nodded, helping her onto the horse with surprising gentleness. As they traveled in silence, Tabitha's mind raced with possibilities for tomorrow. Perhaps she could work for passage on a stagecoach to Cheyenne, find laundry work there. The ranch appeared as they crested a hill, a modest but well-maintained homestead with a main house, barn, and several outbuildings. Smoke rose from the chimney, and the golden glow of lamps spilled from the windows. "You live alone?" Tabitha asked cautiously as they approached. Just me and Hector, my foreman. He's got a cabin on the far side of the property. Zachary helped her down from the horse. His wife died of fever 2 winters back. Inside, the house was simple but comfortable. A fire burned in the hearth, and the smell of stew simmering on the stove made Tabitha's stomach growl painfully. Sit, Zachary instructed, gesturing to a worn armchair near the fire. I'll fetch some food. Tabitha sank into the chair gratefully, adjusting Samuel in her arms. The baby had quieted, his eyes wide as he took in the new surroundings. When Zachary returned with a bowl of stew and a cup of coffee, she realized just how hungry she was. Thank you, she murmured, accepting the food. There's milk in the pantry, he said, watching her juggle the baby and bowl. For the little one. His name is Samuel, Tabitha offered, surprising herself. I'm Tabitha Hayes. Zachary nodded, pouring himself a cup of coffee before sitting across from her. What happened in town, Mrs. Hayes? The direct question caught her off guard. I'm a widow, she said automatically, and I struck someone I shouldn't have. Must have been quite a reason, he remarked, blowing on his coffee. Tabitha's hands tightened around the bowl. He tried to take my son, said a woman alone couldn't raise a boy properly. That Samuel deserved a real family. When I refused, he tried to pull him from my arms. Her voice caught, so I hit him, hard enough to bloody his nose. The mayor's son, Zachary guessed, his expression darkening. Harold Pullman. Tabitha looked up in surprise. You know him? Know of him. Man's made enemies all over the territory. Zachary set his cup down with deliberate care. Town council banished you for defending your child. They said I was dangerous, unnatural. The words still stung. They gave me until sundown to leave. Samuel began to fuss again, and Tabitha set aside her half-empty bowl to comfort him. Zachary rose without a word, returning moments later with a small cup of warmed milk. Here, he offered. Got a clean handkerchief, you can dip in it for him. Tabitha accepted the milk, watching with curiosity as this rough-looking cowboy moved with surprising knowledge around a baby's needs. You have children, Mr. Dawson? A shadow passed over his face. No, madam. Helped raise my sister's boys for a spell after her husband died. He cleared his throat. There's a spare room upstairs. Used to be my mother's, clean sheets on the bed. We'll be gone by morning, Tabitha assured him quickly. I don't want to impose. Zachary regarded her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. And where will you go? The question hung in the air between them. Tabitha had no answer that wouldn't sound like the desperate plan it was. Thought so, he said finally. Mrs. Hayes, I run 500 head of cattle on 3,000 acres. This house is too big for one man, and I've been looking to hire help with the cooking and housekeeping. Tabitha stiffened. I don't accept charity. It's not charity, it's a job offer, he corrected. Room and board for you and your boy, plus wages. I'm tired of my own cooking, and the place could use a woman's touch. You don't know me, Tabitha protested. I could be anyone. Zachary's mouth quirked into a half-smile. You're a mother who bloodied Harold Pullman's nose for trying to take your child. That tells me enough about your character. People will talk, she warned. Let them. My nearest neighbor is 2 miles away, and I've never much cared for gossip. He leaned forward, his eyes serious. You and your young will live with me, Mrs. Hayes, at least until you find your feet. No strings attached. Tabitha felt a tear slip down her cheek, quickly brushing it away. Why would you do this for strangers? Because 18 years ago, my mother was thrown out of a town much like Willow Creek with me in tow, he said quietly. A rancher gave us shelter, taught me everything I know. When he died, he left me this place. Zachary stood, moving toward the window. I'm just paying forward a kindness. That night, lying in a clean bed with Samuel sleeping peacefully beside her, Tabitha allowed herself to weep silently, not from despair, but from the overwhelming relief of finding shelter when she'd expected none. In the morning, Tabitha woke to find fresh clothes laid outside her door, simple work dresses that must have belonged to Zachary's mother. They were a bit large but clean and well made. After dressing and tending to Samuel, she ventured downstairs to find Zachary already gone, a note on the table explaining he'd be working with the cattle until midday. The kitchen was well stocked, but showed signs of a bachelor's neglect. Tabitha set Samuel on a blanket on the floor and set to work. By the time Zachary returned, sweaty and dust-covered, she had prepared a hearty lunch and begun organizing the pantry. "Something smells good," he remarked, hanging his hat by the door. "It's the least I could do," Tabitha replied, setting plates on the table. "To thank you." Over the meal, Zachary outlined what the housekeeper position would entail: cooking, cleaning, mending, and general upkeep of the house. The wages he offered were fair, even generous. "I accept," Tabitha said finally, "but on one condition. This is a business arrangement, Mr. Dawson. I work for you, nothing more." If her declaration disappointed him, he didn't show it. "Understood, Mrs. Hayes." As autumn deepened into winter, Tabitha settled into life at the Dawson Ranch. The work was hard but satisfying, and for the first time since her husband's death 2 years prior, she felt a sense of security. Samuel thrived in the peaceful environment, growing stronger and more curious by the day. Zachary proved to be a respectful employer, always maintaining appropriate boundaries. He was gone much of the day, working with his cattle or handling business in neighboring towns. When home, he often spent evenings by the fire, reading from his impressive collection of books or whittling small wooden toys for Samuel. Tabitha found herself watching him, sometimes the way his large, calloused hands could be so gentle with her son, the quiet intelligence behind his weather-lined eyes. She told herself it was merely gratitude she felt, nothing more. December brought heavy snows that isolated the ranch for days at a time. During one particularly fierce blizzard, Zachary returned from checking the herd with a fever that quickly worsened. Tabitha found herself nursing him through 3 harrowing nights, pressing cold compresses to his burning forehead while Samuel slept nearby. "Elizabeth," he murmured in his delirium, reaching for her hand. "Don't go." Tabitha soothed, wondering who Elizabeth might be. "Rest now." When the fever finally broke and Zachary regained lucidity, something had shifted between them, a familiarity born of crisis that couldn't be undone. "You saved my life," he said simply one morning as she brought him breakfast in bed. "You saved ours first," she reminded him. Their eyes met, and Tabitha felt a rush of warmth that had nothing to do with the fire crackling in the hearth. Quickly, she busied herself straightening the room. "Who is Elizabeth?" she asked before she could stop herself. Zachary went very still. "My wife," he said after a long pause. "She died 6 years ago. Childbirth. The baby too. I'm sorry," Tabitha whispered, understanding now his knowledge of loss, his kindness to her and Samuel. "I didn't know. Not something I talk about much," he admitted, "but maybe I should have told you." His eyes found hers again. "No secrets between friends, friends." The word felt simultaneously too much and not enough. As winter yielded to spring, Tabitha found herself smiling more, laughing even. Samuel took his first steps in Zachary's sunlit kitchen, toddling precariously from her arms to the rancher's outstretched hands. The look of pure joy on Zachary's face in that moment made her heart twist painfully. "He likes you," she said unnecessarily. "Lucky for me," Zachary replied, sweeping Samuel up into the air, "since I'm quite fond of him too." The words hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Tabitha turned away, suddenly afraid of what might show on her face. That night, after Samuel was asleep, Zachary approached her with unusual hesitation. "Town council's having elections next month," he said. "I've been asked to run for a seat." "You should," Tabitha encouraged, continuing with her mending. "You'd be good at it. It would mean facing the Pullmans. Taking a stand against them." Zachary sat beside her. "It might stir up trouble for you." Tabitha set down her work. "Are you asking my permission?" "I'm asking if you're ready for what might come. People talking, questions about why you're living here." His voice softened. "I won't do anything that puts you and Samuel at risk." The concern in his eyes made her breath catch. We can't hide forever, she said finally. Do what you think is right. Zachary nodded slowly. Then there's something else we should discuss. He cleared his throat. People will assume things about our arrangement. It might be easier if what? Tabitha prompted when he fell silent. If they believed you were my housekeeper, nothing more, that you have your own quarters and we maintain proper distance. His eyes wouldn't meet hers. To protect your reputation. A wave of something like disappointment washed over her. Of course, she agreed, trying to keep her voice neutral. That would be best. Spring thawed into summer, bringing new calves to the herd and new challenges to their careful arrangement. Zachary won his council seat handily, despite Harold Pullman's father's opposition. His first act was to propose an ordinance protecting widows and orphans from forced separation. When word got back to Tabitha, she found herself blinking away unexpected tears. That night, she prepared Zachary's favorite meal as a small celebration. Over dinner, with Samuel babbling happily in a high chair Zachary had crafted, they spoke of the future for the first time. I'm thinking of expanding the operation, Zachary mentioned. Maybe horses as well as cattle. That sounds promising, Tabitha replied, noticing how Samuel's dark curls had grown to match the exact shade of her own. I've saved most of my wages. By winter, I should have enough to perhaps look for a small place of our own. Zachary's fork paused halfway to his mouth. You're planning to leave, the hurt in his voice was unmistakable. Tabitha looked up in surprise. I thought, isn't that what you'd expect? I can't impose forever. Impose? Zachary set down his utensils carefully. Is that what you think you're doing? I work for you, Tabitha reminded him, her voice small. This is a business arrangement, your words. My mistake, he said quietly. I suppose I thought things had changed. The silence stretched between them, broken only by Samuel's contented babbling. Tabitha's heart hammered against her ribs. Had things changed? Of course they had. She thought of the way Zachary read to Samuel each night, the gentle guidance he offered without overstepping. The way his eyes sometimes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. I should check the north pasture fence before dark, Zachary announced abruptly, rising from the table. Don't wait up. He was gone before Tabitha could respond, the door closing firmly behind him. Samuel looked at the empty chair and made a questioning sound. He'll be back, Tabitha assured her son, though her own certainty wavered. Zachary didn't return until well after dark. Tabitha heard him moving quietly around the kitchen, then the soft creak of his bedroom door upstairs. The distance between them felt suddenly vast and unbridgeable. The following days were strained, their conversations limited to necessary exchanges about the household and Samuel. Zachary spent more time away, attending council meetings or working with the herd until sunset. Tabitha threw herself into her duties, telling herself this was for the best. Attachment only led to pain. Then came the letter from Harold Pullman's lawyer, delivered by a grim-faced messenger. It stated in cold legal terms that Harold was petitioning the court for custody of Samuel, claiming Tabitha was an unfit mother living in an immoral arrangement with a bachelor. Tabitha's hands shook so badly she could barely read the words. When Zachary found her, she was sitting motionless at the kitchen table, the letter crumpled in her fist. What's happened? He asked, alarm evident in his voice. Wordlessly, she handed him the paper. His expression darkened as he read, jaw tightening with each line. This is retaliation for the ordinance, he said finally. Harold's using you to get to me. He wants my son, Tabitha whispered, her voice breaking. They're going to take Samuel. Zachary knelt beside her chair, taking her cold hands in his warm ones. No, he said firmly, they won't. I won't let that happen. You can't stop a court order, she argued, tears spilling down her cheeks. We'll have to run again, tonight. Running makes you look guilty, Zachary countered. We'll fight this properly. He squeezed her hands. Trust me, Tabitha, please. It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the intimacy of it jolted through her. Looking into his determined face, Tabitha found herself nodding. What will we do? She asked, sounding stronger than she felt. Zachary stood, his expression resolute. "First, I'm calling in every favor I'm owed. Judge Harrison has known me since I was a boy. He won't be easily swayed by Pullman money." True to his word, Zachary sprang into action. Messengers rode out to neighboring ranches, returning with promises of support. Character witnesses were arranged. Hector, the ranch foreman, volunteered testimony about Tabitha's devoted mothering and the proper nature of her employment. Through it all, Zachary remained a steady presence, his determination never wavering. Each night after strategies were planned and letters written, he would sit with Samuel, reading stories until the boy fell asleep. One evening, watching from the doorway as Zachary gently tucked the blanket around her sleeping son, Tabitha felt something in her heart give way completely. "He loves you," she said softly. Zachary looked up, his expression vulnerable in the lamplight. "The feeling is mutual," he replied. Then with careful deliberation, for both Hayes family members, Tabitha's breath caught. "Zachary, you don't have to say anything," he assured her quickly. "This isn't the time, but I needed you to know where I stand, why I'm fighting so hard." The hearing was set for the following week. As the day approached, Tabitha barely slept, alternating between hope and terror. The night before, after Samuel was asleep, she found Zachary on the porch, staring at the star-filled sky. "I've been thinking about tomorrow," she began. "So have I." Zachary turned to face her. "There's something we haven't discussed, something that would nullify Harold's entire case." Tabitha waited, her heart pounding. "If you were my wife, no court would entertain removing Samuel from our home," Zachary said quietly. "A child needs a father, they argue. I could be that for him." "Legally? You're proposing marriage as a legal strategy?" Tabitha asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Zachary stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "No, I'm proposing marriage because I love you, Tabitha Hayes, because I want to raise Samuel as my own. Because I want to wake up every morning knowing you'll both be there." He took a deep breath. "The legal protection is just a fortunate side benefit." Tabitha felt tears welling in her eyes. "You love me." "Since that first night when you stood in the darkness holding your son, ready to fight the whole world to keep him safe." Zachary's voice was rough with emotion. "I tried to keep my distance, to be honorable, but every day watching you with Samuel, seeing your strength, your kindness." He shook his head. "I was lost before I knew it. I told myself it was just gratitude I felt," Tabitha confessed, moving closer to him, "that I couldn't possibly be falling in love with you." Hope blazed in Zachary's eyes. "And were you right?" "No," she whispered. "I was lying to myself." His hands came up to frame her face, thumbs gently brushing away her tears. "Marry me, Tabitha, not for the court, not for appearances, but because we could build something real together, the three of us." "Yes," she breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle at first, then with growing urgency. Tabitha wound her arms around his neck, feeling years of loneliness and fear melting away in the warmth of his embrace. They were married the next morning by Judge Harrison in his chambers, hours before the scheduled hearing. Samuel sat contentedly on Hector's lap, occasionally pointing at his mother and new father with delighted recognition. When they entered the courthouse for the custody hearing, Tabitha walked with her head high, Zachary's steadying hand at the small of her back. Harold Pullman's smug expression faltered at the sight of them together, their simple gold bands catching the light. "Your Honor," his lawyer began, "we're here to address the unsuitable living arrangements of the minor child if you're referring to my son," Zachary interrupted, his voice carrying through the courtroom. "He lives with his mother and father in a legally recognized marriage. I've adopted him as my own." The judge, a stern man with shrewd eyes, examined the marriage certificate and adoption papers. "These appear to be in order," he declared. "Signed by myself just this morning." Harold Pullman surged to his feet. "This is a sham." "They've only done this to circumvent the law, Mr. Pullman," the judge said coldly. "Your petition rested on the claim that Mrs. Hayes, now Mrs. Dawson, was an unfit mother because she lacked a husband and the child lacked a father. Both conditions have been legally remedied." He glanced at the documents again. Furthermore, I note several affidavits attesting to Mrs. Dawson's excellent care of the child and Mr. Dawson's sterling reputation in the community. But Harold sputtered. Case dismissed, the judge declared, bringing down his gavel with finality. Outside the courthouse, with Samuel securely in her arms, Tabitha turned to her husband of 3 hours. "Is it really over?" she asked, hardly daring to believe it. Zachary wrapped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. "It's over," he confirmed. "No one will take him from us now." "Us," Tabitha repeated, savoring the word. "I like the sound of that." "So do I, Mrs. Dawson," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "So do I." They rode home together, Samuel nestled between them on the wagon seat, babbling happily at the passing scenery. As the ranch came into view, Tabitha felt a surge of emotion so powerful it momentarily took her breath away. This was home now, truly home. 5 years later, on a bright spring morning much like the day they'd married, Tabitha stood on the porch of the expanded ranch house, watching Zachary teaching 6-year-old Samuel to ride his own pony. Their 3-year-old daughter, Grace, sat on her hip, pointing excitedly at her brother's accomplishment. "Papa is teaching Sam to ride like him," Grace exclaimed, her dark curls so like her mother's bouncing with excitement. "Yes, he is, sweetheart," Tabitha agreed, adjusting the child on her hip to accommodate her growing belly. Their third child, due in summer, kicked vigorously as if eager to join the outdoor activities. Zachary looked up, catching her eye across the yard. The love in his gaze still made her heart skip, even after all these years. He said something to Samuel, then jogged toward the porch, his smile widening as he approached. "How are my girls this morning?" he asked, kissing Tabitha softly before taking Grace into his arms. "Waiting for our men to finish their riding lesson," Tabitha replied, leaning against his solid warmth. "Samuel's a natural," Zachary said proudly, "just like his mother." "I think you mean his father," Tabitha corrected gently. "I've never been much of a rider." Zachary's expression softened. "He has the best of both of us," he said, his free hand moving to rest protectively over her rounded abdomen. "All our children do." Tabitha covered his hand with hers, remembering the frightened young widow who had fled into the wilderness with nothing but her child and her courage. How far they had come from that cold autumn night. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saying we could live with you." Zachary's arm tightened around her. "Best decision I ever made," he murmured against her hair. "Though I think I'm the one who should be thankful you gave me a family, Tabitha. Something I never thought I'd have again." From the paddock, Samuel called excitedly for them to watch as he guided his pony in a careful circle. Grace squirmed to be put down, eager to get closer to the action. "Go on," Zachary laughed, setting their daughter on her feet. "But stay behind the fence, young lady." As Grace scampered toward her brother, Tabitha leaned into her husband's embrace. "I love you, Zachary Dawson," she said simply. "And I love you," he replied, his kiss a promise of all the years to come, until the stars fall from the sky. Together, they walked hand in hand toward their children, secure in the knowledge that what had begun as a desperate act of kindness had blossomed into something rare and precious, a family forged not by blood, but by choice and love.